Okay, let's just jump right in with a really tough scenario. Picture this. You're in the ICU. A patient's life is hanging in the balance. And an AI system, one that's supposed to spot a crisis before it happens, it fails. A mistake is made and someone gets hurt. It is an absolute nightmare scenario. And it brings up one of the biggest questions in medicine today. Who exactly is to blame?
But before we get tangled up in all the legal stuff, let's start with the people on the ground. For nurses on the front lines, AI isn't some far-off scary concept. You know, as this critical care nurse puts it, AI can actually be an amazing partner. It automates the tedious tasks and frees them up to do what really matters, taking care of people.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll see what it's like on the front lines with the nurses. Then, we're going to try to untangle this massive liability puzzle. After that, we'll look at a pretty cool new solution to the blame game, dig into why hospitals might have to take the heat, and then we'll finish up with a really important twist that kind of changes everything.
Right, so what does it actually look like when you put AI in a place as intense as an ICU? Well, a recent study gave us a really fascinating peek through the eyes of the critical care nurses who work with it every day. And what they're seeing is a total double-edged sword. I mean, on the one hand, the upsides are huge. AI does the grunt work, gives early warnings, and lets nurses focus on their patients. But the worries are just as big. There's a real fear of relying on it too much, of getting buried in data, of losing crucial skills over time, and of course, the huge problem of algorithmic bias.
And this, right here, this gets to the absolute core of the issue. Trust. How can you trust something you don't understand? The nurses talked a lot about black box algorithms. These are systems where even the people who made them can't fully explain why they make certain decisions. That lack of transparency, plus all the headaches of making it work with their daily routine, it creates some serious roadblocks.
And that whole not understanding thing, it leads us straight into our big mystery, the liability puzzle. When one of these super complex, murky systems messes up, figuring out who's at fault is like trying to untie a Gordian knot. It seems almost impossible. So let's just ask the question straight up. An AI system fails. A patient gets hurt. Who pays the price? Is it the doctor who trusted the AI's recommendation, the company that wrote the code, or is it someone else entirely?
So our legal system kind of has a default setting for this stuff. Legal experts have a name for it, tort classic. And the whole idea is to find one person, one party to blame. You know, the doctor who messed up, the company that made a faulty car part. Nice and simple, right?
Well, when it comes to AI, not so much. That classic approach completely breaks down. Just think about it for a second. Can you really blame a doctor for going with what an AI says, especially when that AI is often more accurate than a human? But then, can you blame the developer? They have no idea what's going on in the specific hospital using their software. They lack that last-mile knowledge. So you see the problem? Neither one has the whole story.
And this is where things get interesting. If the usual suspects, the doctor, the developer, don't really fit the bill, well, we need to find a new one. And some legal scholars are proposing we shift our focus from a single person to the entire organization.
They call this solution enterprise liability. And the idea behind it is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. Instead of trying to pin the blame on one person or one piece of code, you hold the whole enterprise, in this case the hospital, responsible for what goes wrong inside its walls.
Okay, so why the hospital? Why does this actually make sense when we're talking about medical AI? Well, there are three really solid reasons why the buck should stop there. First off, the hospital has that last-mile knowledge we talked about. They know their patients, their equipment, their way of doing things. Second, it just pulls everything under one roof, which makes sense since hospitals coordinate all the care anyway. And third, it's just simpler. If a patient gets hurt, they have one clear place to go, which means no more of that endless finger-pointing between the doctors and the tech companies.
But hold on, it's not quite that simple. There's a really important catch. You could even call it a plot twist. And it's what makes this whole idea so much smarter and, honestly, safer.
Because, making the hospital responsible only really works if the hospital has the information it needs to actually manage the AI and make sure it's safe.
And that brings us to something called the default shift. It's a proposed rule, and it says that if an AI developer keeps their tech a total secret, if they won't share the critical info on how it works, then guess what? The blame, the liability, it shifts right back to them.
And this is the brilliant part. This whole thing is designed to be an information forcing mechanism. It basically gives developers a huge incentive to open up the black box. If they want the hospitals to hold the liability, they have to disclose the important stuff. What data the AI trained on, how it was tested, all of it.
It forces the exact kind of transparency those nurses were talking about, and it gives hospitals the tools they need to do their jobs and keep patients safe.
So, at the end of the day, this isn't just some abstract legal argument. This is all about protecting patients. It's about building a system of accountability that makes sure these incredibly powerful new tools are brought into our healthcare system in a way that is safe and responsible. Because make no mistake, AI isn't some sci-fi future. It is already in our hospitals, helping make decisions right now. Which leaves all of us with one final and pretty urgent question. Is our legal system actually ready for it?